you all for inviting us here today. To be able to come and share some of our research with you on first and family learners, and also to really start some conversations around how we can best support this student cohort, given that Cara tells me that 70% of CSU student population is first and family, and if we look across Australia, we are currently have over 50% of our student population who are the first and family. So today we've got a few different things that we want to talk about, and I should say before I start, my name is Sarah, and this is Janine over here, and Janine and I have put together this presentation, and we're going to, in case you get bored with my voice, we're going to move between the two of us through the course of the morning. And it's no such thing, as my father likes to say, no such thing as a free lunch. You will be expected to do a little bit of work through the morning as well. So yeah, we've got a few activities for you. So today what we're looking at doing is we're going to talk a little bit about this project that we were involved in over the last year, and really in depth looking at first and family students, the who, the why, and the what participants said. So the research that I'm involved in, and Janine, is very qualitative based. We work within a narrative inquiry framework, which basically means we are very interested in stories, and student voice is very, very important in our work. So the presentation is very rich in student voice. And what we want to do today is show you what came out of that research, practical end, and also talk to you a little bit about where the research is going and what the next steps are. As part of the presentation, we're going to look at what the students that we interviewed, what helped them to succeed, particularly in relation to the role of the family and friends and others in the wider community. So this is something that came out very strongly in our interviews and surveys that we conducted. And then going back to the students to talk a little bit about what the students said helped them to succeed in higher education. And then what came out of the research, which was the First and Family website, which is a non-branded, non-affiliated website that's available for anyone to link to use, to make suggestions about useful resources that could be up there. So we'll be showcasing that a little bit as well, and encouraging you to link to it if possible. And as I said, where to from here. What you will hear today, a lot of it will resound quite deeply with you, because I think you're probably already aware of these things. But I think what I'd hope to come out of this morning is that we generate some conversations around this topic. We think through what's already happening in this space, how would you like to see this space progress, and what would you suggest? So I'm hoping to learn a lot from you and what's already happening here at CSU. So just to talk a little bit about the project, I wanted to introduce you to our project team. I'm here, and Janine is here, and we were also joined by Cathy Stone, who works for, or did work for Open Universities Australia, which is one of the largest online providers in Australia. So we wanted to research first and family students, but we were very interested in students studying in different mediums. So I looked at predominantly undergraduate on-campus students. Cathy looked at online students or distance ed students, so students who were really studying wholly online. They were not coming on campus at all. Jo May works for the Enabling Programme at University of Newcastle, so that was our pre-degree students. They were the students who were just beginning their university journey and doing that Enabling Programme to enable them to come to university. And we were all supported amazingly by the wonderful Janine, who helped to coordinate us and keep us all on track, and also helped with the data collection and analysis. So the reason for the focus on the first and family is because this is a cohort that cuts across a lot of equity categorisation. So we're all aware of the different equity categorisations, but First in Family is actually a way of grouping students, and I would argue it's a way of grouping students in a really positive way. So rather than talking about students and in terms of what they might lack financially, as in our low SES students, or from where they're from, and talking about it in a very deficit or negative way, First in Family actually has the possibility of talking about issues in a really positive way. You're First in Family, congratulations. And what we found in our interviews and surveys is that these students are coming with multiple issues. So they're often First in Family, from rural, remote communities, from quite financially disadvantaged backgrounds, maybe Aboriginal backgrounds as well. So a whole range of issues there. And as I mentioned, the figures, the most recent figures indicate that across Australia we do have substantial, just over 50% of our population is First in Family. And the OECD mean average is 53%. So Australia is right up there, and that's not surprising because we have been in a phase of widening participation. We have participation goals that the government has set. There's a lot of HEP funding available to encourage and engage with students and bring them into university. So we're actually doing quite well with the bringing students into university. I think in some cases we've met those participation targets. Some institutions have exceeded them, but you're probably all aware retaining the students is an issue, and often students come through the door, but it's a bit like a revolving door. They're revolving and they're going out. And this is significant for any student and any person, but it is particularly significant for First in Family students because they are often looked up to by their family, by their siblings, by their extended family, by the extended community. And when that person doesn't make it at university, it sends very, very negative messages back into the family and back into the community. And that's why I feel that this is very important, that we try our utmost to get this right. Internationally, this cohort are reported as not achieving to the same rate academically. So within the States, within the UK, there's a lot of statistics around First in Family students, and quite significant statistics. I think in the States, Ishitani says that First in Family students are 6.5 times more likely to leave the university or not get a degree than their their cohorts who have a sort of a family history of attending university. And within Australia, Coates and Ransom have reported that 26% of First in Family students think about leaving in the first year, and that actually increases for the second year, where it goes up to 34%. But when you start to go to the literature, there is a lot of, it's quite tricky to actually research this in terms of literature, mainly because a lot of the literature focuses on those students that are coming directly from school. Whereas in Australia, we have a large mature cohort as well. And so these are First in Family students, often parenting students. And so there's another layer of complexity there. And also, if you like, another layer of possibility, because they are extending the educational futures of their children in a very active way. And that comes across very clearly in our interviews, and I'm sure it's come across when you talk to students yourself in your own professional roles. The most recent review of literature internationally, and I won't even try and say these people's names because I always get it wrong, but the people with the names on the screen, they say that First in Family students are just reported as simply coping and have a lower sense of belonging within the institution. When you're First in Family, yes, that is regarded as a negative obstacle, if you like, in getting to university, because you're almost twice as likely, twice as unlikely to attend university. And within the UK, Paul says that the socio-economic status of parents and their adult children, there's a correlation. So if your parents haven't been to university, then it's less likely that you will, and it's less likely that you will attain a higher financial status, economic status. So as I said, we were lucky enough to get some money from the OLT, the Office for Learning and Teaching. And this built upon a small grant that I got in 2012. I've actually been involved with researching with first and family students probably for the last 10 years. My PhD followed a group of first and family women through the first year of their degree, and I interviewed them at 4 points through that first year, talking to them. And for these women, I suppose what struck me and humbled me a lot was the incredible transformations that occurred, not only in their family lives, but also in their sense of confidence and sense of self. And that's often something we don't talk about in universities. Universities tend to market themselves on better jobs, better futures in terms of money, but actually what we don't often talk about is the incredible changes that happen in a personal way, and how people grow and change, and how that impacts on the rest of their lives. So, I feel quite strongly about that as well. We define first and family as being no one in the immediate family of origin, and that included siblings, children, partners, parents, having previously attended a higher education institution. And so we also included the family members, because we really wanted to hear what the family felt about this return. So how does it feel when someone in your family goes to university? How does that make you feel? And we surveyed parents, we surveyed children, to find out, well, what did this mean to them? And we believe this is actually one of the first studies that tried to do that. So our research focus is slightly different. So a lot of the research focuses on obstacles. So what are the difficulties and the obstacles for the student cohort? But what we don't really understand is, how do students succeed? So what is it that makes a student continue? What is it that makes them graduate with their degrees? So we come to this from a strengths perspective. We don't want to think about what students lack. We want to think about what students bring with them, and how can we value what they bring, and how can we build upon what they already have. So the cultural wealth that they're bringing to the university environment. So a focus on the strengths rather than the lacks, and as I said, expanding that analysis to include family as well. The first study, which was UOW funded, University of Wollongong, that I conducted, was a very small study, 25 undergraduate students, in-depth interviewing. So we do work within quite lengthy interviews, narrative biographical, so we're very interested for students just to talk about themselves, their life, whatever they feel comfortable talking about. And the focus on that was very much on cultural wealth. So what were these students coming with? And it was a small study, but it was very, very rich. And I was lucky enough that from that data, I published a couple of articles on that, which are at the end if you're interested in reading. The OLT study was a combination of survey and interviews. So we had a survey for students, and we had to change the methodology because initially we wanted to interview students, and we also wanted to interview family members as well. For the on-campus students, actually physically getting family members to come on campus was not something that we could make happen. And that, I think, says a lot. And one of the questions we asked in the interviews was, have your family ever been on campus? And resoundingly, the answer to that was no. And that was even the case when the family may be located 3 or 4 streets away. but there was that invisible barrier where the family didn't really come to campus. Now that's not to say that the family were not supportive, because generally, as you'll see in our data, family members are key. They are huge supports. And that contradicts a lot of the literature, which actually tends to view family in a quite a negative way. You know, that this idea that because your family members haven't been to university, they're actually a little bit of extra baggage you have to carry. But we found that that baggage was not a negative, it was actually a really positive. As I said, we had 3 cohort groups: undergrad online learners, access program, and on-campus undergrads, all domestic, no internationals. We decided that for international first and family students, it is a different story that needs to be told in a different project. So we focused on domestic students, as I said, a family and a student survey, and the interviews with the students. So I won't spend a lot on these slides, just to let you know we conducted over 100 in-depth interviews, 171 surveys with students, predominantly females, but still significant numbers of male students as well. Of our respondents, 109 had children, so 40% were parents. And we only, in the end, managed to do 4 interviews with family members present. But gee, they were great, weren't they, Janine? They were probably, they were terrific. So we had a grandmother, we had a mum, and we had two interviews done with children present as well, and just, they were very rich. And then for the family surveys, because we couldn't get family members to come on campus, we actually went with the option of surveying family members. And that worked quite well. We got 40 respondents, and again, quite a selection of different family members. A broad, diverse age range, everything from 18 to 50 plus. I think the eldest was 64. So we had quite a diverse range of ages. And so the interviews were really interesting because we, as I said, we really encouraged students to tell their stories, and it was very much that deeply descriptive data. And we were particularly interested in students' perceptions, expectations, and motivations. And as I said, we were working on this narrative inquiry approach where really encouraging people to talk about their stories, and, you know, how they have translated their university experience on a very personal level. So some themes that came through from both the interview survey and the survey data were very rich stories, and they were equally rich. So we've included a mixture of quotes from both interviews and surveys in our data. So there's a sense of always having had the desire, and some of these are mirrored in what you just shared too. So a sense of always having had the desire to come to university, as well as wanting to make a difference to not only themselves but others around them, their family and community. And also having a sense of cultural safety. That came out in our focus groups very strongly yesterday, that, you know, there needs to be a safe place to come. You need to feel safe in order to do your best and reach your potential. And, you know, so that's kind of like finding out where you fit, and finding out where you fit can sometimes be a journey in itself. So I'm not going to go through all of the quotes. They'll just sort of come up, and I'll just give a little bit of a summary as we go through, and we will make these slides available so you can look at them at your own leisure. Often students had a long-held desire to come to uni, which was now being fulfilled. But it may have been delayed by circumstances or time or for many other reasons. So similar sentiments were expressed in the interviews. So as we can see from Ali, Lance and Marcus, these were long-held dreams that they really, really always wanted to come to uni. Oh, that's a third one, sorry. So this is a few quotes from Making a Difference and Reaching for Better. So this was a key motivator, and it was really about not only making a difference to themselves but their family members, their children,
and then taking that back into their communities, wherever that was. So making a difference comes out very strongly in this first quote from Liana, who had a deep sense of responsibility for the kids that she was mentoring. She described herself as not having any kids of her own, but these kids that she was mentoring, she regarded as her kids. So she went to uni so that she could experience what they would experience the following year, which is a deep sense of responsibility. Also, betterment for themselves, to become self-sufficient, and for opportunities in the future that would provide just better circumstances for themselves. Being a positive role model, that came out very strongly, and it was often a priority, especially for parents. They wanted to show their children that, you can actually do this because look at me, I'm doing it. So they wanted also to prove something to themselves, that they actually were smart enough. And this comes through as part of the transformation. Often they lacked a lot of confidence because they didn't know whether they could actually do it. And when they found out that actually they could, it was just amazing. They were just absolutely stoked. Well, sometimes it was a personal epiphany. So it was sort of a light bulb moment where suddenly, they just knew that this was right for them. And for others like Vicky, it was at a crossroads in her life. So she came to a point where she felt like she had to make some kind of decision. So it was, one way or the other. And that's often what happens as well. You make a choice. So this is a quote about finding a niche, and you can guess here that this is one of our Aboriginal respondents, participants. It was really important for her to find out where she fit. And the fact that she was involved in this particular mentoring program meant that there was a lot of cultural things happening anyway. So for her to come onto the campus, it was already safe for her. So that's what brought her there, and that's what was keeping her there. So that was really important for her. Emma also mentions that the Indigenous Centre, that came through in our focus groups yesterday, that the importance of having that place where you could go and feel safe. And also having a social group of friends where you can ask questions, they can encourage you, like Emma was saying, her friends are saying, you're getting it. And that was really just confirmation to her that she was smart enough and that she could actually understand the really hard science bits that she found were really difficult in nursing, and which she wasn't expecting. So now we move to what family members noticed, and these are taken from the surveys. So they noticed that there were different conversations happening with their family members. They also saw some positive changes. But as well as positive changes, there was also negative changes. So a couple of mums noticed that their adult students were a bit more anxious and were maybe a little bit more confused about the future, perhaps because there were so many opportunities and choices that were coming up. And now moving on to the transformations. So there can be little doubt that our data has showed significant transformations, as Sarah mentioned earlier. So Corey likens it to being in a foreign country where everything is new. And Emma talks about the transformation. She was, shaking so much she couldn't get her badge on the first day, her name badge. And then a few weeks later, she thought, wow, I didn't really actually relax into it. And so that's an amazing transformation in just a few short weeks. So So coming to university has also opened up new possibilities and opportunities for these students as well. So there's arranging relationships with others. So there's different, as we mentioned before, there's different conversations happening in the home. But this has happened as the students have discovered new depths to their own thinking and their own intellect. And so they're having these deeper conversations and wanting, desiring conversations that are not quite so shallow. And similar experience of transformation, the influence on their children also, as we mentioned before, is really, really important. So kids are being more positive about their homework and also really happy that their parents are actually doing uni studies, very proud. So there were similar responses in the survey about transformations. I'll just leave that up for 3 seconds. So that just confirms that the data was quite similar across both sources. So moving on to modest hopes and significant outcomes, there's an element of altruism that comes across as a driver towards university study for many of these students. Our data certainly revealed that they're not asking much for themselves. They're mostly looking to be able to pay their mortgage, to educate their children and get a better job and have better opportunities. And they're sort of modest and socially responsible achievements as well. But this doesn't diminish and may even enhance the personal transformations that have occurred. They obviously have more self-confidence and improved sense of self. They're able to see the bigger picture and what opportunities are out there much more clearly. They can also see that there's new opportunities that are opened up as a result of getting a better education. And also career opportunities, of course, that's an outcome that's also really significant. And changing attitudes towards education and the family. So it has a significant flow-on effect.
So I'm going to talk mainly about the family now and what our research indicated about family and family support networks. Thinking about family in a very broad sense, not just in terms of blood relatives, but family in terms of family and community, so the people around the students. So again, the literature indicates that educational aspirations of young people, again, are heavily influenced by parents, particularly in the last 2 years of primary, the first 2 years of secondary. And again, a lot of literature across Australia, UK and America indicates the correlation between low university participation rates and educational levels. So again, this idea that if your parents haven't been to university, then the chances of you going to university are less. And the reasons for these perceptions are that there is a lack of access to an educational memory within the family. So this lack of another, someone who's already been there, where you can ask questions about, so no other to guide. Ball, Davis, David and Ray in the UK, they talk about a lack of transgenerational family scripts or inheritance codes, meaning that there's no sort of inheritance of going, that university is an expectation because previous generations have been there, or even the previous generation. And this can contribute to having a lack of entitlement to be there. So what the conclusion is that first and family students have to do a lot of additional work, and we've touched on that today. And Thomas and Quinn, I think, sum it up really well. So first and family students have to, be the perfect student in a way. They have to be educated, employable. They also have to reassure the family that they've made the right choice, mainly to do with financial investment. They have to open up the aspirations and horizons of family and its community. So they have to go back into the family and, in a way, do a lot of invisible work there with other family members and community members, and they have to prove that everyone can make it. So they're doing a lot of extra work. So in terms of the family, the questions that we were particularly interested in this study was, how does undertaking university impact on the family and the community of the learner? So we were really interested to know what are the actual tangible outcomes? What does this mean? And how does that translate into the household? What happens in the household when someone goes back to university or attends university? And how did the family members react to the student's decision to attend university? So the reactions were quite mixed. It was largely perceived as a very positive move, but there was a lot of concern. So there's this sense of being very proud, but also being very worried. And again, some quotes from students. For example, the survey respondent who says, her parents felt quite uneasy about this. They wanted it to happen, but worried about the financial implications. Whereas this person talks about, they're obviously very supportive. Some reactions were less supportive, again, not surprising. Molly, who's 62, her mother said, you're just too old to do this. This survey respondent had a very negative reaction from her husband. And, it was a waste of time, and this particular survey respondent, graduated and left school in the top 3% of Queensland. But overall, when we looked at the interview data and when we sort of looked at what the responses were, overall they were very, very positive. And the people who were positively reacting, again, were cut across all the various family members, children, grandparents. Grandparents were very important, parents, siblings, and even those who were less supportive often provided a motivation. So it was this resilience, this sense of resilience, and that in a way was a strength. So even when someone was less than enthusiastic, that often provided a motivation or resilience for the student to continue. And Nick talks about his father and the fact that he doesn't really need anyone else. So what overall, family members provide key elements of support. And that probably isn't surprising, but it's funny when you go to the literature, because the literature in this area is largely talking about family, as I said, in quite a negative way. That the family, it's a little bit like, the family, we don't see the family in terms of school. The family don't come to the school, and the parents don't attend that parent information evening. And that's assumed to be a lack of interest. But it is often not a lack of interest. It may be that the parents have had such a negative educational experience themselves that the thought of going to the school is not something that they can do. They can't physically or emotionally can't actually go onto the school grounds because they have too many memories of their own negative educational impacts. So it's important that we move away from assuming that the family is not supportive and recognizing that this is a really key element of support. But there is a disconnect. And that's often around a lack of shared understanding. And interestingly, comes across a lot in family conversations. So this leads me on to an area that I'm particularly interested in, which is the type of conversations that were occurring in the home when the university student returned to university. So we were interested to know, when you've gone back, when you go back to your family members, how do you talk about university? Do you talk about university? Who do you share your triumphs with? Who do you, rejoice or celebrate with? Is it someone within your family? And overall, we found that conversations were quite constrained. And it comes down to this: well, they don't really understand what I'm doing. We'll be watching the news, and they just stare at me when I comment on health policy. There's a lot of self-censorship going on. They're not into universities. It's difficult to talk about. You're getting above us. So for Shani, she's very quiet and silent about her university life. But also, equally, conversations were used as a means to teach others. So these students were also using what they were learning in university to come back and teach others. And again, this survey respondent is actually using her conversations in the home to improve and enrich her own learning. And why don't we make this explicit to students? Why don't we tell them that this might be a good thing? Go back and talk to your family about what you're learning, because actually it's going to improve your own learning. If you can explain to someone else what you're learning, then chances are you'd actually know it in a really deep way. So overall, the help and support that people talked about in the surveys and the interviews were wide-ranging and covered a whole gamut: partners, parents, children, friends, institutional support, staff, support services, external professionals. But we asked them in the survey, have you ever considered giving up your studies? And as you can see, a large proportion had. And so then to follow up with that, we asked, well, when you're thinking about giving up, who do you turn to? So at that moment of crisis, who do you talk to? And very interestingly, you can see it's either myself, it's self-resilience, or my family. So that was quite interesting. The research shows that strong social networks within the university are required for success. So we know very much that students building up a good social support network can help them achieve success. But we're not sure how social or family networks outside of the university, how they assist first and family students. It's still unclear what's the dynamic there. And so I argue that this has a very important role. And building on Bourdieu's idea of social and cultural capital, I want to think about what role is family capital playing in the students' experience. And I use that in a very broad way, talking about really networks of the social capitals that are within the family, but also around family structure and external to the student in general. So overall, we would argue that the family have an important role to play. They are a huge source of emotional and embodied support, a rich source of capital. But also, and first and family students are also cultural change agents. They're actually creating a new space for alternative perspectives on educational participation. But there's a lot of additional constraints and structures that these students have to operate within.
So this has already really been touched on in our reflections earlier, so I'm not going to be telling you anything new, but it's going to reinforce what you already know. So strategies for success, students talked about having to get themselves organised, so learning time management skills. And often these students come in with those skills already and possibly don't realise how valuable that actually is for their success. and then coming realising that, hey, I've got these skills and, this is really helping me. So organisation was a big thing that came out in the strategies. Being proactive and asking questions. So, sometimes it takes a bit of courage to work through asking the lecturer or the tutor, but once students get past that and realise that actually people do want to help them and do have the answers or may know where to find the answers, then being proactive is a really good strategy. And we talked about this in the focus groups yesterday about asking questions. Don't be afraid. Determined persistence was also a strategy for success. So many participants revealed determination and persistence just to keep going, just to plod along and keep going. And also parenting students, especially those with younger children and other family commitments, they prioritise study. So Susanna said, when the children aren't here, that's when I study. Another interviewee said that when the children go to daycare on the 2 days, she just spends the 2 days in the library. So that was her study time. So prioritising it. Often parents studied at night after the children had gone to bed or early hours of the morning. So, finding a space for their studies was a really good strategy for success. So the key findings from this research. So first in family students are seeking to better their lives and that of their families. That's really, really obvious. They are likely to feel out of place at first and often lack confidence and have a sense of being an imposter. I shouldn't really be here. Someone's going to tap me on the shoulder and tell me to go at any moment. So there's that imposter syndrome. They also feel lucky and grateful to be allowed at university, and this was mentioned in a meeting we had at Wollongong the other day, and someone said, isn't that sad that they feel grateful? Shouldn't this be an opportunity for everybody and not, it's great, but it should be just there for everybody, if you know what I mean. Do you know what I mean? I can explain it later if you don't. They were concerned about the impact on their family, and finances particularly came up as an issue, as well as time, lack of time in particular. The unfamiliarity with university was also an issue, and the myths and stereotypes that come with that. So they do need time to adjust and understand the expectations. The language, it's like learning a new language, and I think institutions need to learn how to unpack that and demystify all those processes and big academic words. Also, they need to, and they actually value the support that's given to them. So all the resources that the university has in place are really valued. But as you've said today, sometimes they're hard to find. So I guess an awareness. Asking questions of friends was often something that students did. Hey, how did you find out about this? And so uni friends were often a really good resource for first in family students for finding out stuff. And, of course, they appreciated their family support in whatever form that was and whatever the family was capable of giving them. And also the importance of finding a niche or a sense of belonging, as we've also talked about, was really important for retention of first in family students. And this is just a lovely quote. A dream come true from one of our participants. So this is one of the greatest experiences of my life, and I'm so grateful to be a student at university. It's been my dream for so many years, and finally it's coming true every day. I love being able to study at home so I can be with my children. And I'm so grateful that the government supports me to study so that I can support my children and myself for the rest of my life. It's a beautiful quote. So now I'm going to move to the First in Family website. And this is a website, apart from the homepage, that is predominantly comprised of student voice and family voice. The homepage, if you haven't seen the website before, we've included lots of quotes in it. So there's a series of 5 photos that flash across on the homepage with some of the quotes that are kind of matched to the photos. They're not the people who actually quoted them. So of course the homepage has all the information, you know, the reports and all that sort of, you know, sort of interesting stuff. So we, as you can see at the top here, we've got different levels. So we've got stories, and these are stories which are made up from a whole lot of interviews, and so not one particular participant at all. But they kind of represent, you know, the typical First in Family student or their family members. So we've got one there from Nonna. Will I go through each?
No,
Okay.
yeah, let people have a look themselves.
Yeah, so the next one is success, and this is really resources that students have said have helped them to succeed in their studies. So I might just go into one just to show you what. So we really wanted the website to be accessible no matter what bandwidth you were. So it was important that the resources could be seen online as well as downloadable. So every resource here you will be able to download if you want. I'll just go into one. So on the left-hand side we have the page contents, and then here we have the study hints for the different kinds of students that we had. And if I just go into prioritise, there's a drop-down menu, and these are all the quotes. So this is the way all the pages look basically. Up here we can download that if we want. So I'll just click on that so you can see what it looks like. And that's just so, some people like to have something printed out that they can put on their board, and that's to cater for that if you want. So moving across to the kids, I will have to go to the kids page. Yeah, go to the kids page. So stuff for kids. So we've got stuff for the littlies. So we have a colouring download. We have a lovely story about Emily and her mummy go to school. This was written by Jo May, one of our team, and illustrated by one of my daughters. Yeah. So you must, at least have a little more.
Go into the teenager one.
Okay. So this one's been translated so far into 7 languages. We are hoping to have it translated by the local Aboriginal language.
Yeah.
So that, watch this space. Apparently there is no word for school in the local language, so that's where we're having some difficulty. Yeah. Now this is geared for teenagers. This was also written by Jo May. So
Well, it was written based on interviews. So these are the interviews with the children, and Jo then looked at the interviews and created the books.
Yeah, sorry, I should have said that. Oh, should we go into...
Why not?
So 5 things you should know when your parent goes back to school.
Well, if you go down, because I find that the tips, I have to say this is one of my favourite because I've got a couple of teenagers. it's very much tongue-in-cheek. So if you go down, just go down. So, it talks about, these are the top 5 things you should know when your parent goes back to school. And these are the food actually improves. Because instead of food police pushing fruit, vegetables and lots of other crappy stuff every hour of the day, then what actually happens is you take away more fish fingers, more noodles. And it's just, it's very light-hearted, but I actually think it's really effective.
Yeah. The state of your room. That's like the so-called family holiday. Still go on holiday, but I'm so busy that they send them off with money for popcorn and rubbish. How cool is that? On the minus side, he doesn't get to use his computer so much, and Mum actually knows a bit about computers now, so the parent is watching. Be aware there's going to be a lot more discussion about everything, so no longer are grunts acceptable. The studying parent wants to know what that grunt means. He's actually thinking about going to university, and he's going to start a cuss, children of university students. But in the end, you can see that his mum is happy. And apart from that, there's some really cool chicks and guys skateboard around the university campus. So, it must be a cool place. Oh, here it is. Don't tell her, but I'm actually seriously considering students are all not my mum. And many of them are young, and some of them are seriously bad. So that's a really lovely story. Also in this we have just a little brochure type of thing for how we can help. And this was made from the quotes of the children. So the children were as young as 9 and I think up to 17, something like that. So these are their quotes, their advice. So across here is the resources for family. So this is where you might find some really useful resources for what students said about how family helps and how they can help, and also for what family members said about what they actually do to help. So apart from being their cheerleaders, family members also did really practical things like, do the cooking or the mowing or, pick the kids up. There is something in there, one of the children who, I think she was about 14, said actually it's been really great because Dad's much more involved in us kids now. And so it's been a really positive thing, for Dad to have to step in and do that. So they're similar to the other pages. There's a whole lot of different resources for survival, basically. And then here is the teaching and support. So this is for the practitioners. So you also might find some really useful things here. So, firstandfamily.com.au, easy to remember. Google it, it'll come up as the first entry. So just knock yourself up. Go crazy with it. It's got some really, really good things in it.
My fellowship is very much in the early stages, so it's evolving, and in order for it to evolve, I want to continue conversations with practitioners and with people working across Australia. One of the things I am doing is developing quite grandly national principles for engaging with the family and community of first and family students. And so your Butcher's paper and many reams of Butcher's paper from other sessions that I've run and that I will be running are going to come together to form those national principles. And so what I'm doing is I've set up a blog on the, which I'll show you in a minute, and I will post up my post about today, and I'll probably post what you came up with today as a group, and invite comments on them. The blog, I have to say, is slightly slow with the conversation element and the feedback element, so if anyone wants to jump into the blog and sort of give some feedback, that would be great. And sort of one of the other outputs from the fellowship is some outreach activities where I'm going to work with actual people in that field and develop resources that are implemented. So I'm working quite closely with UNSW, their Aspire program, and also UOW, we have an inter-uni program. So if you're interested in getting involved, there is a research end to this. Cara kindly organised for Janine and I to conduct some focus groups yesterday with students, which were really, really terrific, and really gave me a lot of food for thought and a lot of rethinking of certain things. So they were just terrific. As I mentioned in conversations, there is this blog, which is firstandfamily.com.au/blog. That's quite straightforward. And then we will be organising a forum. I say we, I don't think Janine's aware that I'll be including her in that, but she's very good at organising forums. And as I said, some mentoring workshops available, and there's my email. And if you wouldn't mind completing the evaluations, that would be very helpful to me. And if you are interested in follow-up, please include your email there, and I'll put you in my interested people Excel sheet, and I'll contact you and let you know what's happening, or just to continue. So that's it from us. I hope you've got something out of today, and thank you again for all coming along, giving up your time. Even though the students have gone, I know it's very busy, and I'm sure you're a bit like myself. People say, but the students have gone, you must be doing nothing, but no, things are really, really busy. So thanks again, and I'll just